What's going on, people? I am B Dobbins, FTW. One of my goals with this channel has always been helping gamers get the most for their money, trying to improve your consumer experience. Because I'm confident if I can save you some money every now and then you'll come back and watch my next video, right? And for many gamers who want to play a shooter this year but have a limited amount of money to spend on games, as most of us do, it's important to discuss the pros and cons of Battlefield vs. Call of Duty, because a lot of people are going to have to choose between the two. And pre-orders are already opened up for both these games, which means a lot of people are already making their decision. Millions will have decided one way or another long before either of these games even releases, and so I do think it's important we talk about this now and not 6 months down the road.
These motherfuckers are mine! Stand back!
And it's not that I can guarantee that one of these games will be better than the other, but I do think it's fair to base your expectations on a game's past performances. I've spent a lot of time with both these franchises, and year in and year out I've seen these game sequels change in some ways, but what remains unchanged is that Battlefield games consistently offer more content and higher quality content at the same $60 price tag. And anyone who's played either of these games long enough knows that they stick to a specific gameplay format and content structure. So we do have some idea of what these games will be like, in the sense that one will be a Battlefield game and the other a Call of Duty game. So I'd like to compare the performance of the last 3 Call of Duty games to that of the last 3 Battlefield games. This lineup includes the universally agreed upon worst entries in each franchise, Ghosts and Hardline, and I think can give us an accurate view of what the future of each of these franchises has in store for us. Now, there are 2 ways to determine a game's value. The first and most straightforward way is to simply measure the amount of content in the game. Games are like big-ass boxes of toys. Each individual game mechanic and feature, each playable piece of content is an object you can play with, right? A virtual toy. And the question is, how many toys do you get in each toy box, and how fun are those toys to play with? And whenever I argue that Battlefield consistently offers you more value for your $60, people say, well, that's just your opinion, B-snobbins. But really, it's something that can be objectively observed and measured. I can prove it. The last 3 COD titles have given you, on average, 36 weapons per game, while the last 3 Battlefield titles on average deliver 79 weapons per game. Battlefield's highest being 89 weapons in Battlefield 4, and COD's highest being 37 in Black Ops 3. Call of Duty has averaged 25 different weapon attachments per game, while Battlefield averages 52. And that's not counting any of the cosmetic variants, like the tri-beam laser sight and shit. Call of Duty has, on average, 19 pieces of equipment, while Battlefield averages 39. And both those counts include lethal and tactical grenades. Weapons, attachments, and equipment are all a huge part of what provides replay value in any game, each offering new playstyles or new ways to experience the gameplay, if even sometimes in just a slightly different way. And just going by the numbers so far, Battlefield typically offers you about twice the amount of content, twice the amount of toys as Call of Duty. But of course, most of the replay value any game has to offer is typically derived from its multiplayer maps, right? And that's why maps are always the primary content you get in new DLC. When you get a new map, what you're getting is new rushing routes, new flanking routes, new power positions, new choke points, and this should result in new and different kinds of combat scenarios, unique engagements and gunfighting experiences. Your experience on a map like Nuketown is going to be different from your experience on a map like Hunted, and that's replay value. So the more maps you have, the more replay value you get, the more different kinds of experiences you have. And on the face of it, if you just count up the maps, Battlefield averages 10 maps per game, while COD averages 13 maps a game. But this is incredibly misleading, because it's kind of like saying 13 slices of bread are the equivalent of 10 Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, goddammit. Size matters, kids. And a Battlefield map is arguably anywhere from 5 to 10 times the size of a Call of Duty map. An individual flag on a Battlefield map would offer you about the same amount of content as an entire COD map. Typically you have 5 to 9 flags on a standard Battlefield map, not to mention the majority of the map will usually consist of all the terrain in between the flags. But let's say Battlefield map is just the flags, and let's say every Battlefield map has the lowest amount of flags possible, which is 5. That would still be 5 times the amount of terrain-based replay value, 5 times the amount of content, and that's lowballing the shit out of it. The truth is, it's probably much closer to 10 times the amount of content as COD. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 ways to determine a game's value, and the second way is to measure the actual amount of replay value, how many different experiences the game's content actually offers. And this way can be more difficult because, you know, your experiences aren't as tangible as counting up the toys. It's not something you can see and point to, but ultimately, it can paint a clear picture of what you're getting for your money. And it's going to be a more useful form of measurement when comparing asymmetrical stuff like Battlefield's vehicles to COD's kill streaks. and also these games' overall quality, their graphics, sounds, and gameplay mechanics. The best toys that Battlefield and Call of Duty have to offer are undoubtedly their vehicles and kill streaks respectively. But it's hard to compare this last layer of each game's multiplayer because COD kill streaks are very different from Battlefield vehicles for a few reasons. For one, many kill streaks as playable pieces of content are more equatable with a single weapon on a Battlefield vehicle. For instance, Call of Duty always has like some kind of airstrike kill streak, right? And of course, Battlefield has its own airstrike toy too, but it's only the secondary weapon on your jet as opposed to an entire kill streak, right? The jet that you also get to fly, by the way. Now, my favorite Call of Duty toy of all time was the MW2 Chopper Gunner, and some version of that is always included in every COD. I believe right now it's the Mothership, correct? And Battlefield has its own Chopper Gunner toy, except it's only one weapon on the Attack Chopper's gunner seat. And counting both seats, that Attack Chopper has 4 different weapons in total, all deadly as fuck, and in a helicopter you can actually fly and maneuver around in. One possible numerical comparison is maybe comparing all the different kill streaks with all the different primary and secondary weapons options in Battlefield's vehicles. If we did that for Battlefield 4 and Black Ops 3, for instance, we'll count specialist abilities as kill streaks because that's essentially what they are, except, you know, they're guaranteed. And counting things like the Rib Boat and the Attack Jeep, Transport Heli, and Amtrak all as one toy each because they're transport vehicles, so they don't have multiple weapons, but they do count as a toy. If you added it up that way, comparing kill streaks to primary and secondary weapons, you'd actually come out to exactly 36 toys each for both Black Ops 3 and Battlefield 4, which is a fucking coincidence. I was genuinely surprised when I counted that shit up. But that numerical comparison is a bit misleading. For one, because it counts things like the UAVs and care package, which aren't really toys in the same way that a 30mm cannon or a transport heli are toys. And also because it includes the many COD kill streaks that barely count as toys at all. You know, things like Raps or the Wraith, these aren't playable pieces of content because you don't play with them. You know, you push the button and the helicopter comes in and tries to get free kills for you, and its success basically depends on luck, you know, how many people are stupid enough to go outside. So those aren't toys so much as they are dice you get to roll for free kills, you know what I'm saying? So ultimately, trying to evaluate your actual experiences with these toys provides a much clearer perspective on the disparity of multiplayer content. And when we evaluate our actual experiences with these toys, the first thing you have to consider is that you don't get to play with kill streaks nearly as often or consistently as you do Battlefield's vehicles. You know, playing with kill streaks will always be inconsistent because it depends so much on how good the enemies are you're getting matched with, how well you're playing that day. And even on a good day, you get to use your kill streaks only once or twice every 10 minutes, you know? And of course, the higher kill streaks like the Mothership, you only get to use those, you know, once every couple of matches, if that. Nowadays, the highest kill streaks I'll only be able to play, you know, a handful of times a year. And I'm a 2KD player.
Spotted a hostile jet!
And then when you do finally get to play with any of these toys, they're on set timers. Even if they aren't destroyed, they'll despawn in 30 to 60 seconds every time. But you can play with Battlefield vehicles much more often, consistently and longer. All you gotta do is spawn in them, no questions asked, you know. Now sometimes maybe the vehicle you want is taken, maybe you get the gunner seat when you want to drive, fly, but there are always at least a few idle vehicles at the spawn screen. You can check for vehicles in between lives, you can see which vehicles are waiting to respawn. You get to use these vehicles until you get outplayed in them. You know, they're not on set timers or anything. And even if you could use the COD streaks as often as Battlefield vehicles, they still wouldn't offer a tenth of the replay value. Because it's important to understand that the vehicles in Battlefield exponentially jack the replay value of the game by offering so many different kinds of battles. You know, each vehicle essentially constitutes a new enemy you have to fight on the battlefield, right? So if you're playing infantry, not only do you get in fights with other infantry like yourself, as you do in COD, but you also have infantry on tank battles where you're posted up in a window, popping off rockets, telling your buddy to try and snipe his repair guy, leaving C4 traps on the road, trying to drop C4 down as you parachute from a transport heli or something. You know, you got one guy lasing the target so that everybody else's rockets have instant lock. But then, if you get into your own tank, that tank-on-tank battle is a completely different kind of fight, a completely different kind of gameplay experience. than from when you were infantry. You know, now you're dodging shells, trying to outmaneuver your opponent, juke them out so they waste a shot, rush and try to get a shot off on their flank, timing active protection to absorb the maximum damage possible. You know, his gunner hops out to try and lob an RPG at you, but you mow him down with the HMG. Your gunner gets out to lob his own rocket and initiate emergency repairs. You have a completely different set of tactics and capabilities once you're in that tank. And then when you get into the helicopter, that heli on tank battle is going to be its own unique encounter, completely separate from when you fought that tank with your own tank, and also completely separate from when you fought that tank as infantry, right? You're going to be dodging tank shells, trying to land rockets. His gunner's going to be spraying you down with his heavy turret, trying to get you off him. And then it'll be an all new kind of engagement when you fight a helicopter as an attack boat. And then when you fight the attack boat with a rib boat, spraying it down with a minigun while your boy launches RPGs. You're driving, swerving that motherfucker left and right to avoid gunfire, catching mad air on the waves. You see what I'm getting at here? You're going to have a unique battle, a unique gameplay experience with every different kind of vehicle you encounter, multiplied by every different kind of vehicle you can operate. Vehicles in Battlefield are more than just playable pieces of content, they are separate game modes. When a game has an extra game mode, what you're getting is different enemies, different abilities, different challenges that require different kinds of mental thought processes and strategies to overcome, and that constitutes a new gameplay experience. Each vehicle cast offers this. You have an infantry shooter the same as COD, but then on top of that you have a tank game in there, you have a helicopter game, a jets game mode, a naval warfare game mode, and that is what we call gameplay depth, and Call of Duty's multiplayer doesn't offer that through its kill streaks or anything else. I mean, it's technically possible for the kill streaks to get in fights with each other, but it happens so rarely that it might as well not be. I mean, in theory you could fight an AGR with a Talon or something, but I don't think I've ever actually seen something like that happen in any Call of Duty, and I've called in quite a few kill streaks during the over, 200 days I have logged on various COD titles. The only kill streak combat I've ever seen is usually like a chopper gunner, or a mothership accidentally destroying a sentry gun that was next to a enemy they were trying to kill. You don't have that kind of exponential diversity of combat scenarios. Using kill streaks against enemy infantry is just barely a different experience from infantry on infantry. You know, when you play the AGR, you're not utilizing cover strategically, you're not dodging rocket fire or countering enemy attacks by some other means, you're not coordinating with your team, there's never any teamwork tactics involved. You're doing exactly what you do as regular infantry. You're playing hide and seek, except for a little while you are overpowered enough that you don't have to worry about other people killing you, right? So you just get to mob around on the map and hopefully you see as many people as you can in that overpowered thing before the timer runs out. It's not its own unique experience. You know, when you call in a Hellfire missile or the Mothership, there's not a whole lot of depth to those toys. There isn't a wide variety of different kinds of battles you get into with them. It's always going to be the exact same experience, no matter what map you're on, no matter what game mode you're playing. The only thing that changes is how many free kills you can rack up. That toy is going to play the same every time you call it in. Because the whole point to kill streaks isn't to get in fights or experience new things, it's to give you free kills. You know, calling in UAVs or reactive armor, super speed, the Mothership, the Wraith, the Scythe, or some other overpowered specialist weapon. These aren't going to provide new kinds of experiences or combat scenarios. They give you temporary advantages that let you experience more of the same thing, free kills. And Call of Duty's basic bet is that if they give you enough free kills, you won't care about its replay value or game depth, or for that matter, its subpar technological capabilities. Which brings me to my final point. It's not just about how much content each game has, it's about the quality of that content and how that quality affects replay value. Despite being the most profitable game franchise in the world, Call of Duty still runs on a modified version of the Quake engine from the 90s, a potato engine. While Battlefield is using one of the best engines on the market today, and this disparity in tech has two significant implications that everyone ought to consider when choosing between these two titles. The first being that Battlefield will always have better graphics and better sounds. And not just a little better, a lot better. It's night and day. They are of a significantly higher quality. The result is a higher level of immersion, excitement, and engagement. It means that every individual piece of content stays fun that much longer. You know, is it more fun to witness an explosion in 3D digital Blu-ray or on a videotape from the 90s using a potato monitor you found in your parents' basement?
Reaper down. I set the C4!
The quality of graphics and sounds does enhance the experience. That's why we care about the quality of graphics and sounds in every, in movies and games. That's why it's always a major selling point that games and movies rely on. But what's more important to consider is that Battlefield's technological capabilities exponentially jack its replay value even higher than it already was. You know, the ability to run dynamic environments in 32v32 adds an unfathomably high amount of variety to Battlefield multiplayer in a way that COD is technologically incapable of matching. In Battlefield, there will be a time when you're fighting for C flag on Gold Mud Railway, and you'll have a squad, and the enemy will have a squad, and it's this, you know, small 5v5 tactical skirmish. It'll have a TDM or search and destroy feel to it. You and your buddy are going through buildings, you know, clearing rooms stealthily one at a time. You got an anchor hanging out on the roof to serve as a spawn point if you get whacked. He's got some traps set up to defend his position, and you know, you duke it out with the enemy and try to clear them all out of there so they can't keep respawning onto each other, and it's a fun little combat scenario. But then it's going to be a completely different battle when each team shows up to that same flag with 10 guys in a tank each. You know, then you're going to be trying to literally destroy enemy positions by lobbing rockets and directing the tank fire at their strong points. You're going to have guys rushing the tank with C4, trying to push it back with rockets. It's gunners playing whack-a-mole on you guys, you know, trying to gun you right as you stick your heads up with your rockets. You and 3 of your buddies look for their spawn beacon, and, you know, you're throwing smoke in the street to give you some cover while you sprint across it to clear a different building. And you got a support player on the roof above you laying down the LMG suppression on anything that moves. And then it's a completely new battle all over again when 5 more guys and 2 more fucking tanks from each team show up along with transport helis, and you have 3 tanks on each team, and the infantry is rushing around repairing, and medics trying to keep people alive, and you're lobbing rockets in the sky trying to get that transport heli because it's rapid deploying enemies and parachutes who are raining down grenade launchers and rockets on your ass, and now there's fucking snipers in the hills, so your support guys are deploying mortars on the roofs to try and counter them, and all the meanwhile you have this ridiculous fucking infantry battle going on in the streets and alleys, windows, hallways, and staircases, fighting door to door and healing, and the attack jets do strafing runs, dropping J-dams on your shit, and the building you're in is about to collapse, so you hightail it out of there just to see your team's jet crash in the street in front of you, and it's mayhem, and now there's an attack chopper raining down its gunner's cannon on you. It gets hit by a stinger, it's disabled, spiraling downwards like it's fucking Black Hawk Down. They crash land, the pilots know they're fucked, so they get out of there, they hop out, only to be roadkilled by a tank that just accidentally ran him over running through the street, which right after that hits some AT mines and is now disabled. It's a sit and duck in the middle of the street, and the gunner gets out to repair, but he gets fucking sniped, so you go to repair to finish the job, but while you're doing that, some guy comes and slits your throat, and the tank you were repairing backs up to run his ass over too. And then at some point, maybe your team has mostly been pushed out of the flag and lost the battle, and it's just you and your squad left to try and contest the flag, and now you are outnumbered and outgunned, holding defensive positions against a superior enemy force. And that also will be its own unique kind of battle with unique tactics and experiences. There is a seemingly infinite amount of replay value available because of how many different combinations of combatants there can be. In COD, for instance, we all agree that, you know, ground war domination is a different gameplay experience from regular 6v6 dom. The pacing, the intensity, and frequency of fights, different enough to constitute its own playlist, right? Well, the same is true in Battlefield, except the options are on fucking steroids. A 6v6 plays differently from a 9v9, the 9v9 plays differently from the 12v12, the 12v12 plays differently from that same 12v12, but with 2 tanks and a helicopter on each side. But then the 12v12 with the vehicles plays very differently from the 6v10, with the team of 6 having a little bird backing them up, and that plays differently from the 10v15 on a beachhead when the side of 15 has an attack boat and the side of 10 an attack helicopter. And that plays differently from the 18v18 with attack jeeps, Amtraks, light tanks, rib boats, little birds, and mortar trucks arranged asymmetrically on each side. And then the exact same 12v12 battle with the same vehicles would still play completely differently on any other different flag. That exact same battle with the exact same combatants is going to be a totally new combat scenario because it plays so differently on top of a sinking aircraft carrier than it does in the middle of a city during a sandstorm. And the funny thing about Battlefield is you can have both those different battle locations on one map at the same time. And then later on in that gold mud match we were talking about, maybe you end up in another 6v6 skirmish on that same C flag. But now, even that is going to play completely differently from your 6v6 skirmish earlier because all the terrain has been wildly rearranged by destruction in the dynamic environment. It's a completely new map now with different choke points, flanking routes, pieces of cover, and power positions. A single flag, roughly the size of a COD map, will be a completely new quote-unquote map by the end of each match, assuming enough fighting has taken place there. So not only are these Battlefield maps bigger than Call of Duty maps, but because they evolved, they almost count as, you know, 2 or 3 different maps in one loading screen. So you have the different combinations of enemy forces, the different places those forces do battle, and those places themselves constantly changing in real time, and the result is a fucking absurd amount of exponential game depth and replay value, and Call of Duty just doesn't have that. Every match of 6v6 Dom you play on Combine is going to play like every other match of 6v6 on Combine. The only changing variable is the enemy team's competence. Call of Duty does not have a tenth of the gameplay depth or replay value you find in Battlefield, and that's true even when you factor in zombies. Now, it's true if you're interested specifically in wave defense against AI enemies, you can't get that in Battlefield, but like I said, you know, a new game mode is new enemies, new environment, new capabilities, and new strategies to overcome different kinds of obstacles, and by that definition, I'd argue that Zombies, you know, offers an equivalent amount of replay value to not a single Battlefield vehicle, but one class of vehicles. I'd say that your Battlefield Air Combat game mode is on par with your Wave Defense game mode, in the sense that they each offer new enemies, new environments, new capabilities, and new kinds of strategy to overcome new obstacles. But just because COD cut up its content into 3 game modes instead of 2, right, the campaign, Wave Defense, and multiplayer, doesn't mean it's actually offering more content, alright? It's important to remember that. If each of these games was a meal, Battlefield multiplayer would be like this fat-ass stack of chocolate chip pancakes lathered in butter and syrup, while COD's multiplayer would be like, I don't know, 2 pieces of buttered toast with a side of zombie salad. And they each offer like an equivalent campaign glass of milk, okay? Now, the COD meal has a side that Battlefield doesn't, but are you gonna get as full off the toast and salad as you do the pancakes? I don't fucking think so. And is the toast and salad a bad meal? No. I mean, toast and salad's alright, but both these meals are $60, okay? And it might be a while before you get to eat again. So choose wisely. And if you're someone who plays multiplayer more than zombies, then you're better off having that extra content included in the game mode where you spend most of your time anyways. And let's be honest, how much replay value does a zombies map really have these days? How many times do you play it before you're bored of it? For myself, it's always less than like 5 or 10 plays, and it's not like each match really offers anything new or interesting. Most of your replay value in zombies is driven by you failing to complete whatever tedious, overly complex tasks there are, not because there's actually something new to do. And so in my humble opinion, by every measurement, Battlefield will always have more to offer you for your money. But the catch is, all that extra content Battlefield has, the weapons, the vehicles, the dynamic maps, means a steeper learning curve. You have to learn how to use and counter all those weapons and vehicles. You have to learn how to adapt to maps and battles that are evolving around you in real time. Bigger maps means that much more stuff to memorize. It means it's that much harder to find enemies, and that can be intimidating to people. What Call of Duty offers that Battlefield doesn't is training wheels. An instant, mostly effortless gratification. There's not a whole lot to figure out. You walk forward, the maps are designed to guarantee you find an enemy as long as you keep walking forward. And then you just have to point and shoot. There's no complex mechanics, the maps are super simplistic, generally 3 lanes, fully symmetrical, easy to memorize, the cover is always polygonic, the gun recoil is mostly aesthetic, it'll rarely affect your gunfights. You can generally get away with using SMGs like ARs or vice versa. There's never going to be an adjustment period. You pick up the game, you'll instantly know how to play it. You won't be confused about anything, you won't have to learn anything. And look, I get it. We buy games for entertainment. We don't necessarily want to have to struggle, to put work or effort in just to enjoy something. But there's a reason that Call of Duty is able to sell you a new game every year. Because by that time, without fail, 20 million people are already bored of the previous one. Call of Duty will always be more fun on day one, but it gets old fast because in order to be that fun on day one, it has to remain simplistic. It can't have bigger, more detailed maps, it can't incorporate complex game mechanics, it can't utilize a diverse selection of weapons, attachments, and gadgets and vehicles, because those things make the game harder to learn. It gives an advantage to experienced players who have learned the game over newer players, which would make it much harder for newer players to do well and have fun their very first match. And if the game isn't instantly fun for anyone trying it even for the first time, well then COD loses literally the only thing it has over other games. COD can't have more content or more interesting content because its gameplay format cannot properly function unless it is a bare-bones, simplistic children's game. After a week, you will run out of new things to do. The first match you play is basically what every match thereafter is going to look like. But 2.5 years in, I'm still finding new things to do on Battlefield 4. 2.5 years out from release, Battlefield still has 100,000 players online. No Call of Duty game can boast that same accomplishment in a similar time frame. So many players stayed online for so long on this game that 2 years out, DICE was still dishing out 3 free DLC maps and many free weapons. If you haven't played Battlefield, then you'll always have more fun with Call of Duty on day one. RPG! But if you can get through the pains of learning something new, you'll realize that Battlefield will always be more fun, and it will stay fun for much longer. The For the Win query of the day is based on what you have seen so far from Infinite Warfare and Battlefield 1. Which game do you think looks better, and why? Thanks for watching. Please remember to rate. This is Batman, signing out.
I'm getting fucked up the ass over here!